Welcome to Care, Share and Inspire, our climate wisdom studio live from COP28 in Dubai, UAE. We bring together experts from science, politics and spirituality to explore new solutions to deal with the unfolding climate disaster. Myself, I'm Golo Pilz and I'm the advisor on renewable energy to the Brahma Kumaris, and I will be today's moderator. The third day of COP is ending, and after giving their speeches, the exhibition and seeing the exhibitions, the head of states are leaving. It's now all up to the delegations to deal with the details, the formulations, the commas, and the little tricky points. In order to stay below 1.5 degrees, countries have to increase their CO2 reduction. We just have apparently 6 years before our carbon budget is being used up. So not much time, and the negotiators are under immense pressure from their own consciousness to come to a solution. But we also have a big number of lobby groups here, and they would like changes rather slow. So these are certainly interesting times. We will keep you up posted on all the development, what's going on at the conference. I'm very glad I have today 3 experts with me, experts from spiritual field, from the religious field, and from politics a little bit. Next to me is Dr. Vera Rodenhoff. She is the Deputy Director General for International Climate Action and Energy Transition in the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. Vera holds a doctorate in international law and has been working on international climate and environment and energy issues for over 20 years. I would like to welcome also Dr. Carlos Cepeda. He is the Assistant Director of Policy and Practice at the Laudatio Si Institute, University of Oxford. He brings the Institute's research on integral ecology into action, especially with indigenous and faith-based communities. He deals with the challenges of applying ethics, values, spiritual and faith-based ecological principles across politics and practice. Carlos is also the chair of Faith for Earth Steering Committee at the United Nations Environment Programme. And last not least, Sister Jayanti Kriplani is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, a spiritual movement with headquarters in Rajasthan in India and more than 6,000 meditation centers in India and about 800 abroad. The Brahma Kumaris is accredited to the UNFCCC since 2009, and Sister Jayanti has been to almost all the climate conferences since then, and she's also the main representative at the UN. So without further ado, let us now engage in a meaningful discussion. Vera, you are also a COP veteran, and we have met many, many times. I remember in Paris also when the famous Paris Agreement was being signed. And a little personal question. I would like to ask you, what is your personal passion to come to this climate conference and engage here with all these people, because you come since so many years, and please share a bit what's your personal motivation?
Well, my motivation, first of all, is really that the climate crisis we are experiencing is one of the worst crises we are experiencing now and ever in humanity. And so if we do not manage to keep temperatures well below 2 degrees, or basically below 1.5 degrees, then it will be very difficult and not fun and just very difficult for us to live on this planet. And I love the planet. I love to hike. I like people and nature. And so this is something worth fighting for. And also coming to COPs, sometimes it can be frustrating. You mentioned the negotiations, but it can also be inspiring to see how people then, even coming from very different angles and backgrounds, can come together and agree on something. So yeah, we need to do it, and we can do it. And engaging with everyone around the solutions, this is something that can even be fun in a way, but it's a serious cause.
It's your love for nature and also your interest to communicate and bring together people. Very nice. Carlos, this is your first climate conference, but you have some experience, I heard, in other conferences to negotiate. And I also like to ask you, what drives you to come and engage at this huge venue? I mean, today we tried to get into the conference and it took us, there was like long queues. Are these conferences the right platform to build planetary communities that care for Earth?
I think they are a good step in the right direction. And I think my motivation is that humanity has all sorts of colors, diversity of knowledge and wisdom. And we need to be near all the voices of the marginalized, of the excluded, of the vulnerable. And one of the key things is that they can appear and spring from different places in this platform. It's not that everyone is included. It's very expensive to come here, and it's very difficult in many ways for, think of indigenous communities, think of people that have all sorts of barriers, including disabilities or whatever you can think of. But it is a good step in the right direction because there's a lot of incredible human beings come to this space with ideas that are very transformative and can exchange them and think of a cross-pollination process. And I think that's very important because what we need is more knowledge and wisdom that really cross-pollinates across society. And I think that's what drives me, because where else will you have, 75,000 people at the same time talking about not just climate, but all the interconnected issues, the social and the ecological. And I think if we're ever going to do something, it needs to be integral of all that knowledge and wisdom.
Very nice motivation. Everybody comes from everywhere together here at this place, and we discuss how to heal the planet. Sister Genti, 2 days ago, the conference agreed on loss and damage funding. It was a bit of a breakthrough, at least in the press it was told, and the German government was also involved. Many details have to be worked out, but it's already clear that it's not enough money and it comes a bit late. And the big elephant in the room is also how to reduce the emissions, because no money in the world can pay for the damage. How much money you can pay if the climate crisis really unfolds much further. Historically, the developed nations are somehow responsible for the emissions and for the majority of the emissions at least. And so this is also a big question of climate justice, of justice with the indigenous communities, with the communities in Asia, developed world, but it's also historical question because all this started long time ago. So how to heal this injustice? What has to be done from a spiritual perspective?
Well, before I get into that, and it's a very serious question, I just want to acknowledge that we are sitting here in the UAE, and today happens to be the National Day for UAE. And so I just want to thank our hosts for including climate change within their celebrations also. But the whole subject of injustice, it's a global subject. It's not just climate change, and it's not just in one part of the world. Truly, it's a world in which there's huge inequality. And I'm thinking about gender, I'm thinking about finance, about racism, all of these things. And I sincerely believe that only when we realize that it's actually a spiritual problem, it's a problem that's come about because we've forgotten about spirituality, we've set it aside and said, well, we can't see it, so it doesn't matter. But in fact, the things that you can't see are sometimes more important than the things that you can see with your physical eyes. And so I think that because the problem is that we've eliminated spirit from everything else that we're doing, whether it's our entertainment, whether it's our information, whether it's our education, there's no sign of it anywhere in any of these things. And so only when we bring spirit back into our hearts and our conversations and realize that that is the key, I don't think we're going to find any solutions. And so for 80 plus years, the Brahma Kumaris have been sharing a vision which is a spiritual vision, understanding that when I come to the awareness of the inner being of who I am, the soul, and I see everyone else with that vision of being part of my family, only then can I start moving in the direction of repairing the damage, but also then moving towards a better world for all. There's a slogan, we don't want to leave anyone behind, but they are behind. Only 10% of the world is in front, 90% of the world has already been left behind. So it seems like there's a blindness about what's going on. I remember in one particular COP some years ago, a Japanese scientist was speaking on behalf of the scientific community. They usually have one speaker who addresses certain issues. And he said, I don't know what to tell you. He was speaking to the governments at the opening plenary. And he said, I don't know what to tell you anymore. You've heard everything and you all ignore everything. So that's one part of the story. But again, I feel that when we tell people about spirituality, again, they think, well, it's a luxury. When I'm 60 years old, 70 years old, I'll come to that. And for the moment, let me get on with my life here and now. But in fact, it is at the very core of healing human hearts, but also healing the planet and bringing about transformation.
Right, wonderful. Spirituality at the heart. Yesterday, we also spoke about bring the mind, heart together, and the hands can work. Do the right thing. Vera, you have been in the past one of the negotiators for the German government and have been engaged to reach consensus. As far as I understand, there are lots of brackets in these documents, and the art is always to reduce slowly the brackets, because as long as there is a bracket in the document, it means it's under dispute. And every country has to agree. So it's all about finding a compromise. Is this process not a bit too slow? Often also the agreements are non-binding. Can you share a bit how consensus is being found and what is needed to accelerate the action, specifically the reduction of emissions and phase out of fossil fuels?
Yeah, I mean, the COP is on the one hand about finding consensus in texts. I mean, these are the texts, the documents that come out of the COP decisions. And on the other hand, the COP is actually has this action element of showing what's happening outside the negotiations. So I will address these two parts. So in the negotiations, yes, so there's a text. There are parts of it that everyone can agree to, and then there are parts of it, not everyone, usually it's the countries which are in the negotiations as the parties to the conventions, the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement. And they trying to find a common ground about either climate finance or moving away from fossil fuels or adaptation. How fast do we go? By what means? Who pays? How do we go about it? Through which processes? And we already heard we all come from different backgrounds. Some countries, like my own, have been industrialized. For Germany, have been industrialized for a long time. Of course, we have a certain responsibility, a big responsibility, because we started emitting CO2 emissions first. Other countries came later. There's a growing number of countries, luckily, who are developing, but while, and all countries should develop in order for their people to have a good life. But how to do it without polluting the country, without emitting CO2 and other harmful gases. So in the text, there are these brackets about who pays, for example, and we have to see. So we have to look at what's my position. This is what you said, really. What's my position? Where am I coming from? What's your position? Why are you even saying what you are saying? Why are you asking for what you're asking for? And we try to understand. And sometimes it's possible to agree on the certain topic we're talking about in the brackets. And sometimes maybe in one negotiating track, we're talking about the emissions and another about financing. And then a balance has to be struck between the two. And you make these deals. And sometimes it's just about certain types of formulations of the text in the bracket that more or less are difficult for our parties.
And how to accelerate the action a bit?
Well, the action has to be accelerated by, first of all, committing. There has to be a political will to commit, for example, to phase out fossil fuels, to stop building power stations, to shut down coal-fired power stations. So countries have to commit to that, and maybe other countries have to support them in doing so by paying either public money or giving public money and using this public money to leverage new private finance, because this is what we really need. So a lot of it is about the money, because the money helps transform the way we live, the way our economies work, in a way that is more sustainable for the planet, and so that we can live in it, because this is ultimately what we need to do. We need to shift away from just polluting, from using fossil fuels, but also we need not only to replace them by renewables, we also need to be more efficient with the energy we use. And maybe we just need to use less energy. We need to recycle more different products, use less energy, live in a different way.
It's very interesting. Today, what you said, today I heard that America is joining the coalition to phase out coal-based power plants until John Kerry made an announcement, and they phase out coal-based power plants until
2030. I think
2030.
It's the Powering Past Coal Alliance. Germany has been a member for a long time. Yeah, and it's about for developed countries agreeing to phase out by 2030 and non-developed countries later.
So this is also a way how to accelerate the process by forming coalitions of the willing ones and move ahead.
Yes.
It's very interesting to get a bit of an insight, and it seems it's a bit of a complicated process, and you need patience, probably a lot of patience for this. Yes. Carlos, I know you engage a lot with indigenous communities, and these communities often display astonishing understanding of nature, and always the carbon footprint is very, very low. There's a lot of wisdom in their lifestyle and how they interact with nature. Is it not high time for the developed countries to listen to this wisdom and integrate it? How to build bridges, how to make us listen to the indigenous community and how to change?
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. I think one of the key themes when you think about an integral ecology is that you need to listen deeply to the cry of the poor, of the most marginalized, of the vulnerable, but also the cry of the earth. Now, indigenous communities really have a holistic cosmology where they see themselves as part of nature and not as something disembedded, as we've learned now in this technocratic world. We think that we're disconnected, but actually they see everything as in the opposition to that, as interconnected. And we're all in this dimension of interconnectedness. Also, when you see, for instance, natural resources, the concept that policymakers do use a lot, fortunately, but it is the way the indigenous communities do come from a different perspective. And they don't think, when they see trees and forest, they don't see wood, a material aspect, that you go, and that is the material aspect. They see life, and they see that it's got many dimensions, and that you are part of that, and it's sacred. And that leads you to a different way of defining what is important and the values that are behind. So when you think about your relationship with nature and the spirituality that is embedded in it, you think not in natural resources, governance. You don't govern nature, but you're part of it, and you actually are called to be a guardian of life, of all life.
So how to listen, how to bridge the gap that
So
we hear?
if you start doing this listening deeply, is you need to do going back to the territories and being local, in speaking their own or listening in their own language, and taking the learning in transdisciplinary dialogues, we call it. Basically, what it means is that wherever you are, and you could be even in a place like in ourselves, we are embedded in the University of Oxford, you can localize yourself by connecting with the communities around. There's Zoom, there's different ways of connecting, but the secret is, what you need is to facilitate and lift all the barriers to connect with the local communities and listen to them. And that, if you can do that and have translators, for instance, you can have a different way of interacting, inviting them to a table.
It's a very interesting approach. I like very much their worldview that they say everything is integrated. And 2 days ago, I listened to the speech of King Charles, and he said, we should not forget, we don't own the world, not ours, living on this world. The world owns us. Quite interesting what he was saying. Bit of a change from the old paradigm. Mr. Genti, meanwhile, there are lots of people on this planet and resources are getting tight. So we have to change our consumeristic mindset. But old habits and behavior are stubborn companions. Very difficult to change really on the inside very deeply. Now, meditation exactly promises to bring profound shift into our life. Even can deal with these old habits. Can you share a bit how this works? What's the process when you engage in meditation that, for example, you free yourself of being too over-consumerist?
It's a very natural development that comes about. You don't have to struggle and fight with it, but what's happening is that when you go on that inner journey, you discover the treasures that every human soul carries within itself. Probably the first experience is one of peace. When people come here, again, they comment on the peace they feel. But when I feel that inner peace, it opens a door and I can find the other treasures that I'm looking for. And when I begin to taste those, feel those, then I can say, well, this is more important than buying another pair of shoes or buying another car, etc., etc., etc. So in a very natural way, you move away from consumerism and the habits and the addictions that you had at some point before. You don't have to struggle. But also what happens is that apart from discovering these treasures, you're also receiving power from the divine. Because meditation, we use this word very loosely and it can describe 1,000 different practices. But the meditation we are practicing is of Raj Yoga. Raja, the supreme, the king, the master, and yoga, the union. And so this is yoga with the divine. And through that, you're able to not just experience beautiful things like love and joy, but also inner spiritual power. You know, when people develop a habit, and shopping is an obsession, it's a real obsession now, an addiction, I would say. What happens is that when you have any addictions, they are stronger than your will. Your conscience is telling you, you don't need this, but you still sign the check or give your bank card, whatever it is people do. Okay, I don't have one, so I don't know. But this is what happens, that you fall into bad habits and they continue, they persist. But if I'm drawing power from the divine, then the power that I have within myself is such that I can really check that temptation. It's actually not even a temptation. It doesn't feel valuable anymore. My value system has changed. I'm appreciating deeper, more subtle things than the external physical things. And so now I want to go in a different direction. And so I'm simplifying things, but it's not a sacrifice, it's not a renunciation, it's dropping away the scales that were there in front of my eyes and I didn't realize before. So yes, meditation, Raj Yoga definitely brings about a transformation, and you're able to support nature and other people.
Very wonderful how you share. And after all, the COP is in Dubai, which is the shopping paradise. And yesterday or 2 days ago, I was in the day-to-day hypermarket, and I was totally flashed. There were like 20 rows only of handbags, you know. And I thought, my God, I'm so lucky I don't need a handbag. But then I saw some other things, and I really had to say, Kolo, you don't need that. So it's quite interesting what you mentioned, because there's a big pull also to consume, you know, and advertisement is very, very, very smart nowadays. Vera, as per all the signs, time is getting short. And some tipping points might have been breached, might not have been breached. Debate is going on. 2023 was the hottest year on record. And I know the Potsdam Climate Research Institute is having a supercomputer, and they have a pretty clear understanding of the weather in the next coming years. Europe can expect more heat waves, more droughts, more floods, and a lot of strange weather events. What can governments do to raise the awareness among the common people and prepare society and infrastructure for the coming changes? A very big question, and I know not easy to answer in that short time.
It is a big question. So the question is about how can we communicate and also convey the necessity of something having to change, or that we have to change the way we not necessarily live in a less comfortable way, but just how we do business and live in some ways. We can say, and we have been saying, you know, we can still emit this much. We have to have emissions by 2030 to stay in line with 1.5 degrees. But then sometimes we see the message is not getting across. So I think one part of it is really saying, okay, this is happening, talking about the facts, explaining the facts in easy language. But I think that humans sometimes have this way that we don't want to see what's coming. And certainly if it's not happening tomorrow, if the weather is not really hot tomorrow, but it gets colder again, in Germany right now there is snow, then we just say, okay, it's not that bad. I think this is maybe a natural thing. So we have to really touch people in the way, and explain it in an emotional way, really explain how is this going to affect you personally and your family, not in an over-dramatized way, but also showing we can still act. It's not too late. There is hope. But if we don't do these things right now, you will be impacted. Future generations will be impacted. But maybe if there are heat waves in cities, for example, your grandmother might die in her apartment because it's too hot. This is happening, but people are not talking about it. Mm. So it's really about talking about the facts and then explaining things in a way that people can relate to, I think. Not over-dramatizing, but saying how it is, but also saying, what can we do? You know, we like to do something. We like to be part of a solution. We have to have a vision, not only what we move away from, but what we can move towards. And so we have to actually share that even if you change the way we live, if we actually shift how we do business, how we move around cities and how we live, that does not mean that life is worse, but it's a positive vision that we can give. And I think living, for example, in a city where we have planted more trees, where there are different ways to get around than necessarily in a car, where you can actually, there's something like the 15-minute city, where you can go to do all the things you want to do in 15 minutes from your home. It's much nicer to live there. And actually, even in commercial terms, property prices have gone up, because it's true that it's nicer to live in a greener place. And the air will be cooler. There's usually like two degrees difference and more, and people like to just be there more because of nature. We are attracted to calmness and nature and coolness.
I know many cities in Germany, at least, they're preparing for hotter summers, planting more trees. And I think there's also now the weather service gives some warning if there's some strong rain in the pipeline. So infrastructure is being beefed up for the changes which are going to come.
So it's about infrastructure. It's about maybe planting different plants that are resilient, but are also taste nice, or we can use and manage in different ways. I think the message has to be, it is a very serious situation, but we can still do something, and doing something will not mean that life is worse, will actually mean that life is better. Just might be a little bit different.
And I feel Germany is one of the countries which is quite well informed about the climate crisis. Thanks for sharing that. Carlos, we do live in fast changing times, and the common people also look for guidance and help. And politicians or even pop stars are not ideal role models or examples, I would say, not often. Which role can religion play to inspire people for greatness? Can a God consciousness bring out the best in humans and help to overcome the division which we see in the world right now and the crisis situation?
I believe that faith-based perspectives can be transformative for the good if you tap into the values, the common values, the holistic perspectives that they bring, and the way to connect with this source, let's call it like this way, is like it's like water. It's all around us. It's the faith communities bring a spirit of interconnectedness that we can transfer to politicians, policymakers, decision makers, those in power. Because in the end, it's about how we see with different lenses the reality of ecological destruction. So it's not about, as you were saying, about it's not just seeing the flatness of seeing climate change in a silo. It's actually how everything is connected, how it is social and ecological, and faith perspectives and indigenous spiritualities bring this idea of Mother Earth. If you could zoom out of planet Earth and you just see us as a blue dot, you just see how integral it is. Everything is connected. When you just zoom out of planet Earth and you just see it as a dot. Now, methodologies, the faith-based perspectives, can be integral. That's why the word integral ecology. And I think if we can at least do, we always think faith-based perspectives bring at least, for an integral ecology perspective, at least 4 ways of looking at this. One is that they can show the way of how to listen and respond to the cry of the poor, of the most vulnerable, show and how to listen and care for the common earth, the common goods, and also how to see that everything is interconnected, be transdisciplinary, bring those values into the table. And lastly, that we can convert ecologically, that we can convert from within and also the system.
It's very interesting. Religions can help. Religions can bring moral and ethical standards back. And I think 70 or 80% of the world population, they believe in one or the other religion or belief system. So it's a big power which is actually there. And I know in the interfaith dialogue, which is also going on in the COP, we're trying since many, many years to unlock that voice and make it more heard. So there's a big, big, powerful community there. And let us hope that this voice will be heard also in the future. Sister Genti, maybe the most powerful force in the universe is divine love. It is said love can heal, love can change, and love can create even wonders. It seems the world now needs some extra strong wonder. And can you give an inspiration what is needed in order to experience and share this divine love?
It's very interesting that you say that, what is needed, and what has happened over history is that whenever there's a need for something, there's a response that comes. When I started to teach meditation in London in 1969, that's right, I came back from India at that time, and we started the Raj Yoga Center there, well, those activities, and people would phone and say, we're interested to learn yoga, but what exercise clothes should I bring? And I'd have to explain that, well, meditation is Raj Yoga and you don't need any extra special clothes or postures or anything. But over the years, I've seen how the word meditation has come into our common language. And so it feels as if there's this need to be able to experience something beyond the physical. And so meditation has come in over the last 50 years as a response to that need. I don't think there's anybody who would say now, well, what's meditation? They might not know what it is, but they'll have heard the word at least. And so I think that, yes, meditation is the way forward. The experience of meditation is to go within the self, come to the awareness of the being that I am, the soul, separate to the body. And in that awareness, I can be more open to receiving the vibrations of the divine. On a human level, when I just consider myself as this physical form, my contact is with other human beings, and my pleasures are all from here, there's nothing else. When I come to the awareness of spirit, of soul, then I'm open to the vibrations of the divine, and I'm able to feel the love, the power that the divine can give me. And so I believe that just as there's been a huge shift, even in the 70s, it used to be the periphery. People called them the hippies at that time. And so it used to be people in the periphery who were interested in meditation. Today, meditation's being taught in medical schools in the USA because they're talking about the mind and how to be able to develop the mind, how to stabilize the mind. So meditation really has come into the foreground. And I believe that if people actually want to experience that love, which is eternal love, which is non-judgmental love, unconditional love, it can be experienced by anyone through that contact with the divine.
That's a wonderful explanation. So it's all about being aware that you're a soul and not the body, and connect to the divine. And meditation has become mainstream. How nice. Well, we're slowly coming to our last round of questions, and they will be very short. Vera, please share in one word, what is your good wish for success for this COP? Pack it all in one word.
In one word. That's science. That's 2 words now. Science-based decisions.
Science-based
3 words, actually.
decision. Science-based decision. Okay. Maybe intellectual understanding or rational?
No.
Rational?
Well, rational. The science tells us what we need to do. Now
Let's do it. Wonderful. Mr. Genti, what is your good wish for the COP?
Empathy. I think there's a big disconnect amongst people, and if there can be some empathy, you spoke about the emotional response of people. I think empathy is needed.
Empathy, yeah. To feel the whole world, all the people, what they're feeling, and bring it on the table and act accordingly. Carlos, what is your good wish for the COP?
I think it's justice. Justice. And it's a good wish. Is about making love in action as a transformative affair, not just in the values space, but actually making it something that can change people and change structures.
Wonderful. Justice, empathy. So this is our good wish today for the COP. So this brings us slowly to the end, and it's all about experience of the heart, that we bring intellect, heart, and hand together. And I would like to ask Sister Genti to guide us 2-3 minutes in a meditation and let us experience in our heart all what has been spoken today, and send it to the COP to make them experience it and bring some change. Sister Genti.
Thank you. I'll share my own thoughts as I reflect, and I'll invite you all to follow these ideas. Just let your mind follow these thoughts. Reflecting on the things I've been hearing about, listening, communicating, love. These words begin to make sense the more I think about them. As I reflect deeply, I find the speed of my thoughts slowing down, and the space between the thoughts is a time for experience. Experiencing spirituality, aware of the inner being that I am, and in this awareness, rising beyond the limitations of the physical form and even the physical world, and opening myself to the vibrations of the divine. As I reflect on this being, the Supreme, the being of light, vibrations of love reach the soul. And as I absorb these vibrations within myself, I can feel the trauma of the past being healed, and as I become whole within, I can begin to share these vibrations of pure love with all those around me, from the source of love. The love reaches the soul and reaches out beyond. And the love awakens the understanding of one family. The love reminds us of our eternal connection with one another, and the power of love reaches out to all forms of life, removing the violence that we have been inflicting. Power of love reminds us of the value of each species here on this planet. power of love reaches out to all forms of nature, that we appreciate and treasure what every aspect of nature has given to us for millennia. And the love turns to gratitude. Love from the source is infinite, unconditional, divine. It embraces us all and transforms us to that which is the highest within each one of us, so that together we create a better world for all. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Oh, lovely, Gentiben. I somehow felt you packed our whole conversation in this meditation, and feel we should meditate more often. We meditate anyhow already quite often, but we should meditate more often and send love and cooperation and good wishes to the climate conference. Because quite often it's a stressful atmosphere, and all the negotiators, they really should calm down, experience God's love and compassion. I think compromise and consensus would be found much more easy. This brings us to the end of our conversation. Time is ticking. And I would like to thank to all our speakers, Vera, Carlos, Sister Genti. You did a fantastic job and brought a lot of insight, a lot of sharing, and a lot of caring, as per our motto of our studio here. And thanks very much for coming. It's not easy to commute, you know, and the distances are long in Dubai. And I'd like to mention our patrons, the Brahma Kumaris Kalptaru Tree Plantation Project, the Brahma Kumaris Environment Initiative, Yogis for Future, Radio Madhuban, and India Care Trust. And special thanks on this special day of celebration of 52 years of independence of UAE. Special thanks to the Raja Yoga Center here in Dubai. They're hosting us, they're looking after us, and there are many hands behind the camera to make this studio possible, and a lot of preparation have been done in the past so that all works out nicely and smoothly. And please join us tomorrow for another session of our studio Care, Share and Inspire. Please go to our webpage www.echo.brahmakumaris.org. You will find the programs, you will find all the details. And last not least, thanks to our global audience for staying all the time with us. And goodbye and good night from Dubai.